American heroes. Share it with a child, a nephew, a niece, a grandchild, a child, your own children. It is a gift that keeps on giving. And we started this conversation, I'll end it the same way, being alongside my uncles and realizing today as an adult what giants they were and how unassuming they were. Nothing about their service. They just thought they went and did their job. In fact, they got mad if you tried to suggest they were somebody special, but they were. And all across this great country, there are somebody specials near all of us. And on this day, thank them. Let them know we care for them. And if you know of a family, let them know that we're there for them, for their service.
And I would also encourage people to seek out, I know that there are regional organizations and some national organizations as well that address veteran suicide, because it is a devastating cancer on our veteran community. Now, I will say, since we opened the show with VA Secretary Doug Collins, he is doing a lot to make sure the VA community is getting the needs, getting their needs met. So I'm hoping that will turn that statistic into something that is not quite as dire.
I feel like this Memorial Day is really a Memorial Day of enthusiasm. Maybe something we haven't had for a while. We're going to get the truth on Afghanistan. We're getting a better VA by the day. A couple guys try to put out a patriotic song and they get canceled by the radio station. What happens? Boom. America responds and puts them to #1. I kind of feel like this country is taking a big turn. And
we're back, baby.
Yeah. And I think this Memorial Day, we're back because of the men and women that are keeping us safe today at this moment. And for all those who preceded them, those who had fallen, they've given us this great opportunity to give another good generation of America history going. And it's a fun thing to be an American on a day like this. It really is.
Well, I just signed up for my media credentials. I know Flag Day is June 14th, but before that, on June 11th, is when our nation celebrates. They're going to have a big parade for the Army's 250th.
Isn't that amazing?
So excited
can't wait to see that. Yeah.
I know, that's going to be incredible, and I know that we're going to have coverage of that right here on this show and on this network. But in the meantime, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Memorial Day, and make sure you are checking all of those headlines over on justthenews.com. We are blessed by you being here tonight. We appreciate you, and we will be back here tomorrow night at 6 p.m.
Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day to you all.
The dignity, daring, and devotion of the American military is unrivaled anywhere in history and any place in the world. As our brave warriors have shown us from the nation's earliest days, in America we are the captains of our own fate. No obstacle, no challenge, and no threat is a match for the sheer determination of the American people. For as long as our flag flies in the sky above, the names of these fallen warriors will be woven into its threads. For as long as we have citizens willing to follow their example, to carry on their burden, to continue their legacy, then America's cause will never fail, and American freedom will never, ever die. Today we honor the heroes we have lost. We pray for the loved ones they left behind. And with God as our witness, we solemnly vow to protect, preserve, and cherish this land they gave their last breath to defend, and to defend so proudly. God bless our military. God bless the memory of the fallen. God bless our Gold Star families. And God bless America.
Remembering the Fallen with your host, Beau Davidson, starts right now.
Welcome to Remembering the Fallen, a Memorial Day weekend special for Real America's Voice. I'm your host, Beau Davidson. Behind me, you can see thousands upon thousands of white headstones, each signifying the sacrifice of an American soldier. I'm here at South Florida National Cemetery, which is the final mortal resting place of about 45,000. It is Florida's equivalent of Arlington National Cemetery. And as I survey these solemn graves, which reach as far as the eye can see, you can't help but feel the gravity of sacrifice. Each soldier has their own story, how they grew up, how they joined the military, and ultimately how they died as a result of their bravery. We live in a time when we don't see massive casualties of war. So when you come to a place like South Florida National Cemetery, it is a wake-up call to understand just how many soldiers lost their lives protecting the freedom that we have today. If you've ever been to a Titanic exhibit, oftentimes they will give you a journal that details a particular passenger on the Titanic, their backstory, and ultimately whether they lived or they died. But in this cemetery, we don't know each soldier's individual story necessarily, all the family that he or she had, their goals and their dreams, and maybe even what happened to them. But unlike the Titanic exhibit, we don't wonder whether they lived or died. These headstones are reminders that they lost their lives protecting the country that they loved. Each casket laid underneath this earth is proof that their bones rest on the very hallowed ground they sought to protect. And when you see soldiers salute these graves or caskets, these soldiers understand that their fate could one day be the same. That is the oath that they take. It is a full-time effort to protect this country from enemies foreign and domestic. And surveying this landscape reminds us that freedom has a price. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, freedom isn't free, and that remains true. Today, I will try to take you on a journey regarding the history of Memorial Day, its significance, and I'll speak with guests who will express what the day means to them based on their own unique experiences. And just as importantly, how honoring the memory of those fallen has directed a new charge to create a lasting legacy so that no soldier's sacrifice is ever in vain.
The history of Memorial Day is one that bears distinction from Veterans Day. Brevet Lieutenant Colonel Edmund B. Whitman stated in 1868, "That nation which respects and honors its dead shall ever be respected and honored itself." In the aftermath of the Civil War, northern and southern communities began decorating the graves of soldiers on what were known as springtime decoration days. On May 5, 1868, the Grand Army of the Republic, a powerful organization of Union veterans led by Major General John Logan, issued General Orders No. 11, or the Memorial Day Act. This formally established Memorial Day as a decoration day on which the nation would remember its war dead and decorate their graves with flowers. The ladies of Columbus, Georgia, lobbied for a clearly defined Memorial Day on which to place flowers on the graves of Civil War soldiers in 1866. And that seems to be where the first gathering actually was. The ladies' idea came from the fact that their city cemetery was in disarray, and they wanted to set aside a day to be observed and handed down through time as a religious custom of the country to wreathe the graves of the fallen. Their chosen date was April 26, 1866. General Logan was aware of these memorial efforts, and even one of his soldiers recounted a story of a German soldier who described how it was customary to visit cemeteries and place flowers on graves. And it was General Logan's wife, Mary, who visited a southern city's memorial activities that caused her to suggest this idea for her husband, who codified it in his general orders, making it a national responsibility. And while there may be debate about the day's origins and which community was first, it stands to reason that the bigger significance is the fact that so many Americans, Union and Confederate, North and South, black and white, male and female, all wanted to commemorate the dead. However, I do think we have to credit many women for their initiative. The first National Decoration Day took place on May 30th, 1868, at Arlington National Cemetery. That program included remarks by General, Congressman, and future President James Garfield. It featured a recitation of the Gettysburg Address and the Star-Spangled Banner. General Logan's order stated, quote, "We should guard their graves with sacred vigilance. Let pleasant paths invite the coming and going of reverent visitors and fond mourners. Let no neglect, no ravages of time, testify to the present or to the coming generations that we have forgotten as a people the cost of a free and undivided republic." In 1873, New York was the first state to officially recognize the holiday. A congressional joint resolution was approved in 1950 requesting a proclamation and a day of prayer for permanent peace. Lyndon Johnson made a proclamation in 1966, and the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, enacted in 1968, designated Memorial Day as a national holiday and moved it from May 30th to the last Monday in May.
In recent times, the 2000 National Moment of Remembrance Act established a White House commission urging citizens to give back to their country, which provides them so much freedom and opportunity. It also designated 3 p.m. on Memorial Day as a moment of silence. So as you and your family enjoy the freedom that this holiday represents, remember this history. And women and men across all this great nation had the impetus to honor the nation's fallen heroes, and that it literally took an act of Congress to create Memorial Day as a national holiday. And of course, you will see American flags donning the porches of homes throughout towns across this great country. Maybe you'll even see some folks with patriotic attire on, especially the older generations, what they call the greatest generation. What I think is unique about Memorial Day is that it sprung from honoring the fallen of the Civil War, not the Revolutionary War, which distinguishes it from our Independence Day celebration on July 4th. The Civil War caused so many American casualties that the great poet Walt Whitman said, "Future years will never know the seething hell and the black infernal background, the countless minor scenes and interiors of the Secession War. And it is best they should not. The real war will never get in the books." As America entered global conflicts like World War I and II, of course, Memorial Day came to expand its honoring of the fallen. Regardless of what you do on this particular weekend, which usually involves some sort of rest and relaxation, it's important to remember why you are able to enjoy that type of freedom. It's because of these white graves all around me and the stories that each one of them tells. Take the story of Corporal Dwayne Edgar Dewey. Born on November 16, 1931 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Dewey enlisted with the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve and embarked to Korea in 1951. Corporal Dewey was awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions on April 16, 1952, while serving as a gunner in a machine gun platoon of Company E, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, 1st Marine Division, in action against enemy forces near Panmunjom. When an enemy grenade landed close to his position while he and his assistant gunner were receiving medical attention for their wounds during a fierce night attack by numerically superior hostile forces, Dewey, although suffering intense pain, immediately pulled the corpsman to the ground and, shouting a warning to other Marines around him, covered the grenade with his body. He absorbed the full force of the explosion to save his comrades from possible injury or death. Corporal Dewey died on October 11, 2021. Or take the story of Chris Hickson. Hickson enlisted in the Navy in 1987 and went on to retire as a naval officer. He also went on to serve as athletics director and a wrestling coach at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. Many of you will recall the tragic events that happened in 2018 at this high school, in which a tragic shooting took place. Hickson ran towards the gunfire to protect students' lives, and he was one of the 17 that perished that day. Each story has a chapter in America's history, and also a legacy that involves you and me, because we are both descendants of these soldiers and also grateful recipients of their sacrifice. America's story is an unfolding libretto, but one thing remains constant: it stands for something. That something is liberty. And it's also our greatest export, because other parts of the world now benefit from the sacrifice America has made. No person died in vain. Each sacrifice made the world a better place. Come along with me on this American journey. We'll be right back with our Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins.
We'll be right back with more of this Memorial Day special right here on Real America's Voice.
God bless our military. God bless the memory of the fallen. God bless our Gold Star families. And God bless America.
Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen here on Real America's Voice.
Welcome back to this Memorial Day special, where we remember the fallen and honor their sacrifice. Someone who understands these issues and words perhaps more than most is our very own Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Doug Collins. As a U.S. Air Force Reserve chaplain, Secretary Collins has ministered to our service members since 2002. He completed a deployment to Iraq in 2008 and remains a colonel in the U.S. Air Force Reserve. Secretary Collins, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule today to speak with me about Memorial Day.
I'm glad to be with you.
Well, Mr. Secretary, firstly, we'd like to make the distinction between Memorial Day and Veterans Day, but inevitably, Memorial Day operations heavily lean on your department and its oversight of national cemeteries. First of all, Mr. Secretary, what does Memorial Day mean to you personally?
Well, it means a lot because it means those who gave, as President Lincoln described, that last full measure of devotion to our country. They gave all. They fulfilled the commitment that they made when they raised their right hand and said that they were willing to fight and unfortunately lose their life for this country. I think it's something that we should never take for granted. And for me, especially the VA, we have the distinct privilege and honor of being, for many of those, the last place that they are resting in our cemeteries. But also, it's one of those things, as you said, we need to very much distinguish between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Veterans Day, we get to serve, we'll celebrate all who serve, but on Memorial Day, it's a very special time in which we dedicate our commitment to those that gave all for this country, to commit to ourselves that we'll continue to fight for this country just as they gave.
Absolutely. Well said, sir. And Mr. Secretary, as I mentioned, your department oversees a great degree of the military commemorations that will happen over Memorial Day. When you look out at the vast hills of graves at a place like Arlington National Cemetery, what do you think about?
I think about the stories. I think about the stories behind them, and I think this is the one thing that I want Memorial Day to always be about is, yes, it's we've unfortunately secularized it into the start of summer and school getting out and everything else, but to those families who have loved ones, and especially in the last 20 years, our GWAT generation who have lost loved ones, those missing places at the table are still real. Those missing ball games for parents who are not seeing their kids grow up or go to the prom or go to graduation, those are still very real in their minds. So for me, it's the stories behind it and just seeing how normal, average people in America who stepped up when the nation called gave their life in that service. So it's just something, I think when you look at those gravestones, when you look at the times, I often say this a lot when I've been a pastor now for a number of years, and I always used to say at funerals, we see a birth and we see a death date on these stones, but it's not those two dates that we should remember the most. It's what is in the middle that we should remember, and that is the dash or the space in the middle, because that actually represents the life that was lived.
The dash is so important. That's absolutely right, Mr. Secretary. And I actually wrote a song about that, so I'm so glad you brought that up. You mentioned your work as a pastor. I'd like to focus for a moment on your past work as a chaplain to the military. Soldiers see a great deal of injury and death, and it has been your job to minister to these individuals. What do you say to comfort those who have lost fellow brothers and sisters in battle or on patrol?
Well, I think it's a matter of how each are dealing with it. Some people will, go inside themselves. They'll just internalize it. They don't want to talk about it. You need to get those people to a place in which they're not hindering themselves or hurting themselves by bottling up too much. You got some who are very emotional. I think one of the biggest questions I've always gotten in over the years, not only in civilian pastor, but also in the military and overseas and deployed, was the question of why comes up. And it's this, why did this happen? Why did my buddy happen? Why did she die? Or why did this happen? And I try to turn them to a different question. It's not why, but what. Too many times we'll ask why, and there's not going to be an answer to why, but what? What do we do now? What after this event can we do now? What is going to be our next step is where I try them to focus, because too many times in grief you can get stopped or paralyzed in the moment. And what I'm trying to do is connect them to away from the why, which will take time to answer, but to the what of what they can do next.
And that's a great response. I'd never thought about it that way, but people often question why. I mean, I think that's a reasonable question to have, but the what and what you do after is incredibly important. Some of those headstones that we see, sir, in cemeteries involve deaths of soldiers to suicide. While Memorial Day honors those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, how do we create a better country where veterans can live the rest of their lives without creating headstones much too soon from suicide?
Yeah, there's many of those. Their death by suicide are painful reminders of a long injury that happened when they were serving for many of them, and it was a culmination of not feeling that they had hope or they didn't see any future. We've got to do a better job of welcoming people. We've got to do a better job of understanding that PTS and traumatic brain injury and other things, and just the general nature of being in the military and what you see and how you go about it is something that in our society we should actually do more to just, sometimes it's a matter of just talking to people. It's a matter of a cup of coffee. It's a matter of saying, hey, I hadn't seen you in a while. How you doing? So all the veterans out there and all the people who served, I encourage you, reach out to your buddies. If you've not talked to them in a while, give them a call. Just say, hey, how you doing? It doesn't have to be a confrontational thing. It's just keeping up, just as you would when you were in a unit. Everybody is accounted for. We got to make sure that our veterans, both civilian or helpers and those who have served with each other, are making sure nobody's left behind outside of the military as well.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, I was in Publix the other day, and I saw a guy who had his Vietnam apparel on, and I talked to him for a little bit, and he started talking about Agent Orange. He said, I don't want to hold you up. I said, no, you're not holding me up. I mean, if we can't take a couple minutes out of our day to talk to someone like that who endured being spit upon when they came back, they deserve more than that. So I completely agree with your sentiment, and I think people need to get to know veterans more than just saying thank you for your service. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Edmund Whitman said, that nation which respects and honors its dead shall ever be respected and honored itself. In your estimation, sir, do we respect and honor our dead and in turn command respect and honor ourselves as a nation?
I think we could always do better. And I think it's something for those that served and for those of us who have lost loved ones or friends that we know of. I think it's something we can continually strive toward. It's an interesting part. We are the nation in the world that does strive. We tried to leave no one behind. We still remember our POWs and MIAs, which will always be there until last accounted for. I think those are the kind of things that we need a reminder of. But sometimes, look, it is honest, and time will fade and memories will fade, and it's not as prevalent as it was maybe a few years ago. But remembering those in these monuments, remembering these in the cemeteries that you pass, especially our veteran cemeteries, these were folks who served. Many of them died in the action and combat. They're there because they fought for something bigger than themselves. And I think that's the bigger reason that we need to do is living for those who died.
Yeah, we can always do better, that's for sure. Mr. Secretary, now that you are running Veterans Affairs, has it changed your perspective to oversee that department and what that means in terms of how we honor our fallen, since even in peacetime, we still have service member casualties?
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, I think it just makes it more personal to me. I'm often said, and I've had several veterans talk to me about it. I always talk in terms of my veterans and my employees here because I personalize it, because that for me makes it very real. So the veterans, I don't care if you're serviced by the VA or not, you're still a veteran. To me, you fall under the VA, whether you take our services or not. So it's very important for me to look at it from a perspective of how do we continue to engage the veteran community and engage the veteran families, survivors, caregivers as we go forward. And especially in the part that you mentioned, and from our National Cemetery Administration, where we actually, I love their motto is we have one chance to get it right. And for those family members and loved ones who come to that cemetery for their loved one, whether they died in service or in active duty, or they died, many, many years later, it's still a very act of giving and an act of sacrifice that they have given to this country. And for us, it's our chance to make sure that that dignity is preserved and that, basically respect for what is done for this country is never forgotten.
Yeah, and that's why the subtitle of this special is called Remembering the Fallen and Honoring Their Sacrifice. Sir, lastly, if you could impart one sentiment to those who are watching today in terms of, as a nation, how we should treat Memorial Day and what our thought process should be like, what would you say?
For every freedom you have, Memorial Day symbolizes the sacrifice that some gave for you to have that freedom here in this country.
Well said. Well, Secretary Doug Collins, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. We appreciate your service. We appreciate your continued service as a chaplain and, of course, now as Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Take care.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more of this Memorial Day special right here on Real America's Voice.
bless our military. God bless the memory of the fallen. God bless our Gold Star families. And God bless America.
Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen, here on Real America's Voice.
Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen. My next guest understands Remembering the Fallen all too well. Mark Geist, also known as Oz, is a member of the Annex security team that fought the Battle of Benghazi, Libya in 2012. He joined the Marines in 1982 and served in a newly formed Marine cadre program as an anti-terrorism instructor. He is credited with saving the lives of more than 25 Americans at our embassy in Benghazi, where he worked as a security contractor, and is also the co-author of the book 13 Hours, the inside account of what really happened in Benghazi. Oz, it's great to have you with me today, and first and foremost, thank you for all you've done.
Hey, Beau, thank you for having me on, and thanks for recognizing this wonderful day that's coming up.
Absolutely. It's so important that we remember it. And I know it's called Memorial Day, so we must memorialize those who came before us and who lost their lives. Oz, before we get into the specifics of some of what you experienced, I'm sure that Memorial Day probably has a certain personal significance to you because you have protected Americans in some very dangerous places and no doubt had to see fallen brothers and sisters. What does Memorial Day mean to you?
You know, I think in not only what I've experienced, but what my family has. I had 3 uncles that were during Vietnam in the military, and I had my grandfather, who was probably my hero. He was a tank commander in World War II. And, you know, he served in North Africa. He stayed all the way through to the occupation of Germany, had 5 Purple Hearts, a Silver Star, 2 Silver Stars, and 2 Bronze Stars. So, you know, Memorial Day's always been something that's very significant in our lives as a family, and as you said, me personally.
Yeah. Well, Oz, a lot of your work in the military has been in protecting people, dignitaries, officials, and even prime ministers. As we reflect upon those we have lost, you've been able to protect many who were saved. What do we need to know about what is at stake when it comes to preserving our American way of life?
You know, it's everything. You know, this is the anniversary of our military for 250 years, the Marine Corps birthday, the Army, Navy. You know, we've been around for that long, and we've fought for this country and the values that make this country what it is, that have really been emboldened into our Constitution by our forefathers. And we need to always turn back to that and look to that as our guiding principle of what this country should be and how we should be addressing the future.
You know, it's so important, I think, you, especially coming from a military family, that generation that's new understands those values you're talking about that are embedded in our Constitution: honor, service, duty, glory. I think those are all things that we have to remember or else we'll lose them. And I'm sure that many of our viewers have seen the movie 13 Hours, which tells the true story of what you faced in the attack on our embassy in Benghazi. That's a great example of what I mentioned when I say that we are always under attack in some form, militarily or even psychologically. What did you take away from your experience in those harrowing 13 hours?
You know, it's about brotherhood. It's about the guys and gals that you fight with and that you protect to your left and right. And it's about doing what's right. You know, it doesn't matter what is maybe you're told or what they want to present to you, but you have to do what's right for the people that you're serving with at that point in time. And you know, we're protecting American diplomats, American people that work for the CIA, you know, all kinds of different people that are working and doing the mission for America. And it is so important that we focus on that and make sure that we do what is necessary to bring them home.
Oz, you were credited with saving at least 25 lives that very day. But of course, our ambassador and 3 other souls perished in that attack. That is, I think, a microcosm of the attacks that we face. And still, we live in a relative time of peace as Americans. A soldier that enlists, like yourself, has to understand that he may lose his life. Is that the sacrifice that you were willing to make when you enlisted?
It was. You know, I understood that one from stories and from you know, being raised by veterans and understanding what that was. I can remember, you know, my uncle taking me to the VFW hall and encountering those people that had given so much, whether they had volunteered or whether, that was, a lot of them were in during Vietnam that were drafted. And, how important it is to understand and pass on those traits to our youngsters, whether that be by standing and putting your hand over your heart for the American flag, saying the Pledge of Allegiance in our schools, bringing back those things that have built the young men and women of this country for so many years, to give them the patriotism and love for this country.
Yeah, as we look at those graves that we see there on the screen with the American flag draped over them, I'm sure that perhaps you visit graves of friends of yours that lost their lives protecting our country. Many military graves aren't very special looking aesthetically. I spent some time at the South Florida National Cemetery, and they're all kind of identical, but they're numerous. They're as far as the eye can see. And they don't necessarily have big obelisks or beautiful marble, but yet that headstone tells the story of somebody. Do you believe, Oz, that we do enough as a nation to honor those fallen?
I don't. We have a month for everything else. Why don't we have a month for our veterans and the families that support them? Because they're the ones that really deal with us when we come home. They're the ones that support us, and they're the ones that we depend on and fight for those rights for our spouses, our children. And, they need that recognition and understanding just as much as we as veterans do.
I never thought about that, Oz, but you're so right. Having a month would be a lot better than one day. And we do it for other things. Why wouldn't you do it for the people that sacrificed their lives? Oz, when you see folks out celebrating Memorial Day by, cooking out, going to the lake, enjoying themselves, as they should, do you take some solace in the fact that Americans can do this so freely and peacefully because someone else was willing and often did lay down his or her life?
And that's exactly what it boils down to. We can do what we do in this country. We can be the greatest country in the world. Are we free of flaws? No, we all have our own flaws. We as a country have our flaws, but I've been to probably 40, 50 different countries in my life, and no matter what, this is home, and this is where freedom begins, and everybody wants to come to this country for that freedom. And they should have that right to come here as long as they do it in a way that is legal and through the right procedures.
Do you think, Oz, when you see some of the younger generations, you mentioned it earlier, whether it's protesting in favor of Hamas and Gaza and things of that sort, does it pain you to see that? Because I know we do have a right to speak in this country, of course, as we should. But some of these younger generations, I feel like, are taking it upon themselves to take up causes that are kind of anti-American. How does it make you feel?
I got to be careful what I say because, I support their right to their freedom of speech. I mean, that's what I swore to do when I put my hand in the air and took the oath to join the Marine Corps. And that I hold that dearly for anybody and everybody. But at the same time, if you want to protest, you can protest, but do it peacefully and understandably. But that doesn't mean I have to like it and agree with what you're saying. And it's not that I ain't going to hold you accountable for what you do and for what those that you're protesting for do as well.
Well, Oz, we know the what, which is Memorial Day. We know the why and the who, which is to honor the fallen and their sacrifice. But what about the how? How do we best honor these people in terms of education and a lasting legacy so that nothing and no one is ever forgotten?
I think it's something as simple as every town, every county has a cemetery. I started this when I was with my children when they were young. Is on Memorial Day, our thing is to go and put flags on the tombstones of the veterans that are buried in those towns that have that just nondescript, non-military maybe, and sometimes doesn't even mention it, but those in the town, those in your area know which ones are and are not. But that's a way to just start that conversation with our children as to what those sacrifices are and what those people who did so much for this to give us so much of what we have, and why they've done that. And it opens up that conversation with our children and gives them that solace and understanding of why we are the greatest country in the world.
I think that's a great idea, Oz. If every family could just take some time to go lay an individual flag at a headstone in one of these cemeteries because there's so many of them, thousands upon thousands. And if you planted a flag at one of those headstones, you could look up that soldier and find out who they were, what they did, what their service was. And I think that's a story that should be told because there's so many of them and it's so vast that how could we know all of their stories? But if you planted it, like you said, at one, you might at least know for that one day what that one soldier did in terms of their commitment and their sacrifice. Well, Oz, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. And thank you, like I said, for all you've done, saving those 25 plus lives and what you continue to do today, especially in protecting children. Thank you so much, Oz.
Thank you, and God bless.
God bless. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more of this Memorial Day special right here on Real America's Voice.
Our military. God bless the memory of the fallen. God bless our Gold Star families. And God bless America.
Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen here on Real America's Voice.
And welcome back to this Memorial Day special as we remember the tremendous sacrifice of our service members. One way that the military has honored those who have been killed or wounded in battle is the Purple Heart. The distinction was originally created by then General George Washington. It was all but forgotten until the 20th century when it was revived to honor the great general. So this medal is given to those wounded, killed, or who have died as a result of enemy conflict. Two Purple Heart recipients realized that their injuries had unique challenges. So in 2008, John Galena and Dale Beatty created Purple Heart Homes, designed to meet the needs of those who had been severely injured in battle. Dale and John's Humvee was hit by an anti-tank mine in 2004 in Iraq, leaving Dale a double amputee. And he passed away in 2018 at the young age of 39. I'm joined now by the Purple Heart Homes co-founder John Galena, who has turned service and injury into a major philanthropic charge. John, thank you so much for being with me.
Beau, it's great to be joining you here today, and just thank you for what you're doing to recognize those that have served and sacrificed for our nation and our freedoms.
Well, to be honest, John, the thanks actually goes to you and Dale. And, you know, Memorial Day has to have a special significance for you because in losing your fellow soldier and Purple Heart Homes co-founder Dale Beatty, his legacy and memory must carry a unique value to a day like Memorial Day. Speak to that if you would.
You know, people oftentimes talk about the camaraderie that veterans share and the idea that, you know, there's this bond that's unique. There truly is no way to describe it. When you train with someone, when you live together, you eat together, everything is together. And then suddenly, without thought, those people are just gone. And so it creates this idea, this desire to ensure that, their memory is not forgotten. And whether that's, helping support the family, or whether that's helping support, our other brothers and sisters in arms, you want to make sure that, the goodness that they brought into the world is not forgotten.
John, what was Dale like? Just in a couple of words, what are your best memories of him?
He was a really funny and witty guy. He had a great sense of humor with kids, would oftentimes go to elementary schools and give presentations on days like Memorial Day. And, inevitably a kid's going to ask, hey, did you lose your feet when you lost your legs, or, silly questions. And Dale would be like, yeah, but it's okay because now I don't have to clip my toenails. And, always get a great laugh. And he's just such a good-hearted person.
Well, it's remarkable to me, John, that although you served your country valiantly, you were injured. And rather than letting that injury depress you and impair you, it inspired you to create change for a new generation of soldiers. Explain the difficulties that you and Dale had that led to the creation of Purple Heart Homes.
I think it's really interesting because when you come home from combat, you have a different worldview. You've changed in a way that makes you have this desire to do something good, or to hole up and just go away and not be seen, or not engage with society. And you want to, in that doing good, you want to be able to help people that have meaning and value and connection to you. And that's that veteran community. And we saw how our community stepped up to help Dale. We saw how the Vietnam generation was standing up to make sure that we were not left behind as they were. And in the process, we decided we wanted to create an organization that would provide housing support so that the veterans that fought for freedom could actually experience freedom.
Absolutely. That's very, very heartfelt and to the point. I understand that one of your programs is called Veterans Aging in Place, and it created a wheelchair ramp for a Vietnam veteran named George Kelly, who eventually passed away in his home, but his family sent you his prosthetic leg as a thank you, which you have now repurposed into a lamp at the Purple Heart Homes headquarters. Tell me about that and some memories of George.
George, what a character. Just like Dale, very witty, very humble. George, Vietnam veteran, had contracted Agent Orange, and in the process, in his later years of life, he ended up losing his leg due to complications from the Agent Orange and type 2 diabetes, and it's a an automatic type of condition for many of our Vietnam vets. And they lost more limbs in Iraq than Iraq and Afghanistan combined in 2005. Vietnam veterans are still suffering. And so our program puts those veterans up front. And George's family contacted us and said, hey, our dad can't leave the hospital until he has a wheelchair ramp. Mm-hmm. Is there any way y'all can help? And so we jumped to the truck and went down and built a wheelchair ramp for George. He came home from the hospital the next day, and I was there to meet him. And in the process, he just said, I just want to come home. It's all I want. I just want to be at home. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a few months later, George passed away, and his family had reached out to me and told me thank you. But one day in the mail, I opened up a package, and it's a nice little card talking about what it meant for their dad to be able to pass away in his home, not in the hospital, to be in his home, surrounded by family. And with that, they wanted to give me a token that, I could remember George by. And so I dig into the package some more, and there's a prosthetic leg. And after years of talking about it and showing it to people, it become a cherished memory. And so we've now turned it into a leg lamp that sits in my office.
Well, I tried to find a picture of this lamp, but all I found was the one from Christmas Story. So I've got to see a picture of this. I think it's got to be something remarkable and a great memory of George. Well, John, something that not many people think about are the families of service members who were killed or seriously injured in battle. You've also established an endowed scholarship for residents of North Carolina that I'd love to know more about.
Yeah, a young lady, this is a great example of how anybody can get involved in support. You don't have to be a veteran. right? You don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to be an adult. You can be a young Girl Scout or a young Boy Scout, or just an elementary school that wants to somehow get engaged and write thank you cards to veterans. There's all types of ways to be involved. And Katie Bates, a young Girl Scout who was going for her final award, in the process, decided that she wanted to do something to help the families of veterans. And the way that she wanted to do that was to be able to have a housing scholarship to support the family members, the children of veterans, to be able to have, safe housing while they are going to college. And so it's an annual scholarship that we award each year. And we encourage people to go to our website where they can learn more about it. But Katie raised over $50,000 to create the endowment.
Wow.
And she is a shining light of an example for what we can all do to contribute and chip in. Just got to set our minds to it.
And that's paying it forward. And, John, another thing that we do talk about from time to time is veteran suicide, which is a very real and tragic problem. Tell me about what you've done with Hearts of Healing that addresses the home needs of the families that are left behind with this struggle.
Well, it's really a two-part issue, Beau. It's the part of removing the stressors in the veterans' lives and their families' lives that will hopefully help prevent the thoughts of suicide, right? So we work on that side with the veterans every day to make their homes safe and accessible, to remove the stress and the worry of a leaky roof, to be able to ensure that they have dignity and they can access their bathroom and their front door without anything stopping them, but they can do it on their own. And so that's really the first part. The project that you're referring to, Hearts of Healing, is a project in Virginia where a young family was discovered and shared with us. Basically, two twins were orphaned when their father, who was a veteran, not only committed suicide, but before he did, he killed their mother. And the aunt, the mom's sister, took the two kids in, and along with her family, two children, her spouse, and then their mother, also living in a 3-bedroom house. And so we're in the process of putting an addition on their home in order that they can have adequate space to raise their now enlarged family.
Wow, that's tragic, but again, tragedy into motivation and inspiration. That's what I'm seeing what you've done, which is so motivational to me. And John, I know that Dale was likely not the only soldier that you lost during your time in the military service. Given that this is Memorial Day, tell me about some other military members close to you that have passed away and what their service means to you.
Beau, it's really it's interesting how it works, and I know that all the listeners can relate that two veterans that have never served with one another suddenly see each other and there's this immediate bond. Well, on the battlefield, it happens the same way. You're not always with, the same team on the battlefields. There's lots of teams on the battlefield and you sometimes interact with them. And with that, for me, one of the interactions that I had was a convoy that was attacked, and I was a part of this convoy with another unit that I had not served with or had not trained with. Mm-hmm. And a young man that had been on the convoy with me had just arrived in country that very first day. And a piece of shrapnel struck him in the head, and he's dying in my arms, bleeding. First day, no rhyme or reason. Mm-hmm. But there's this immediate bond and connection. And again, he, like so many others, great men and women, have signed on a dotted line, payable up to their life. Yeah. And we, as citizens that benefit from that, not the government doesn't benefit from it. We, the people, benefit from it. We have to make sure that we remember their life and their legacy and their contribution.
Yeah, I think as people look out, especially watching that, we'll see Arlington National Cemetery, and each white headstone represents an individual, with an individual story and an individual sacrifice. I mean, collectively we talk about it, but each individual soldier has that story. Finally, John, how can people get involved with Purple Heart Homes on the volunteer side, or maybe if perhaps someone knows of a wounded veteran in need of this type of assistance?
Well, Beau, let me first tell you again, thank you for helping put the word out and what you're doing to honor those that have sacrificed for our freedoms. And I think that's really the key, right, is that we put some action to it. And that the best way that we can honor those that have sacrificed is ensure that those that served alongside them that returned home are able to enjoy some of those freedoms that they fought for. And that starts with freedom of movement within your home and safe access within your home. And people can check out our website. There's lots of ways to volunteer, to host a fundraiser, to support a project, to start a chapter, to lead a chapter in your community. And so we encourage people to just simply find a way to get involved. It's not about John. It's not about Purple Heart Homes. We're merely a conduit to connect the veteran community with the rest of their community, with the civilians in that community. And we're all connected in some way. We just have to sit down and give thought to it.
Yeah, well, I like the fact that you said that young, old, woman, man, Boy Scout, Girl Scout, doesn't really matter. Veteran, non-veteran can get involved. So I encourage people out there that are watching to go to Purple Heart Homes, to go to their website and find out more about them, find more about John and Dale's story. And as you said so appropriately, honor their sacrifice. John Galena, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Beau.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back with more of this Memorial Day special right here on Real America's Voice.
Bless our military. God bless the memory of the fallen. God bless our Gold Star families. And God bless America.
Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen, here on Real America's Voice.
Welcome back to Remembering the Fallen, a special in which we honor the sacrifice of American military heroes. As you saw in the last segment, the Purple Heart is a badge of merit that distinguishes those soldiers who were severely wounded in action, killed in action, or died from mortal wounds. Here at South Florida National Cemetery, there are many recipients of the Purple Heart, including Staff Sergeant Juan Rivadeneira and his buddy, Corporal Jorge Velasquez, who both have Bronze Stars and were killed in action in 2010. As I mentioned, Memorial Day was created to honor those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And oftentimes, families find out that their now deceased grandfather or great-grandfather was awarded a Purple Heart. And it reveals a piece of history about that soldier. It's part of their story, and indeed part of America's story. I recently met a man at a local grocery store who wore his Vietnam hat proudly, and he told me that he was a medic and saw all kinds of death and destruction. He also told me he was spit on when he came back home. And to me, no matter how you feel about war as a whole, those who put their lives on the line deserve our honor, admiration, and respect, never our spite or to be shamed. I thought about that because no doubt he lost many friends while trying to help his wounded brothers in Vietnam. Every Medal of Merit tells a story. Minot J. Savage once said, "The brave die never. Though they sleep in dust, their courage nerves 1,000 living men." And Thomas Campbell said, "The patriot's blood is the seed of freedom's tree." To close out this special, I want to leave you with my song, Heart of Purple and Gold. In the song, the lyrics say, "He fought for his country to keep it proud and free. And if it weren't for his service, there would be no you or me. Every time I tell his story, it just never grows old." This Memorial Day, let's memorialize these soldiers. Let's tell their stories. Let's honor, respect, and revere them. Because if it weren't for their service, there would be no you or me. Remember the fallen and honor their sacrifice.
He opened that little box with eager eyes. He couldn't wait to see what was inside. He held that shiny medal from WW2, flipped it round and said, "Hey Ma, that's my name too." She said, "Your grandpa fought in places far, far away, and though you never met him, he loved you just the same." He said, "Mama, what else was Grandpa like?" Well, he fought for his country to keep it proud and free. And if it weren't for his service, there would be no you or me. Every time I tell this story, it just never grows old. He had a heart of purple and gold. Well, your daddy felt just like your grandpa did. When Vietnam came looking, he never hid. He don't talk much about it, 'cause that's not what men do. But a tattoo of Old Glory, and his scars tell the truth. The bullets flew around him like horizontal rain, and because of his courage, his men made it out that day. And angry people said, "Why'd you have to fight?" He said he fought for his country to keep it proud and free. And if it weren't for his service, there would be no you or me. Every time I tell this story, it'll never grow old. He has a heart of purple and gold. Well, Mom, I write this letter from camp. I wish I could tell you where, but I can't. I've met so many guys from Maine to Tennessee who love our great nation just as much as me. But Mom, we got attacked on patrol the other day, and I lost a lot of brothers, and I'm in a lot of pain. So Mama, soon I'm coming home. And I fight for my country to keep it proud and free. And if it weren't for Dad and Grandpa, there would be no you or me. And every time I tell my story, it'll never grow old. I've earned my heart of purple and gold. Yes, every time I tell this story, it'll never grow old.
live from Studio 6B on a Memorial Day weekend. Glad you're in, everybody. Slick's going to be doing some sports. Rick Delgado is going to be doing the news. Paul Nolan's found his way into the studio. He's going to be doing some news as well. Aaron and Fran.
Paul Nolan is loitering again.
Aaron and Fran holding it down as always. And, of course, you, the live from Studio 6B audience. Glad you're in, everybody. Hope you're having a great Memorial Day weekend. Hope you're going to have a great Memorial Day weekend. Lots to cover tonight on the show. We'll have some Memorial Day thoughts. I'll have some here coming up in a second. But Slickster, how are you?
I'm doing good, Big Dave.